October 7th was a day of enormous tragedy on the one hand. And within this tragedy, it was a day of miracles for many people.
Welcome back to another episode of On the Ground with Samaritans Purse, where we take you to the front lines and behind the scenes of our work around the world. I'm your host, Kristy Graham, and if you're like me, you're closely following what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Samaritans Purse is supporting more than 80 church partners in both locations. We can't talk about all of our work in this region for security purposes, but one area we can talk about is our support to a local emergency service agency in Israel, which is called Magen David Adom. Samaritans Purse has committed to replacing 21 of their ambulances that were destroyed by Hamas. 7 of these ambulances are armored. This week, I was able to talk to 2 Israeli first responders, Uri and Hadass. They both work for Magen David Adom. They were both actively involved in the response on October 7th when Hamas terrorists attacked Israel. I was overwhelmed and humbled to have the chance to hear their stories firsthand, and I know you'll be touched by their bravery and service, and you'll see why these ambulances are so desperately needed.
Magen David Adom is actually the emergency medical and blood services for the state of Israel. That means that we are mandated by the state of Israel to provide first aid services to the entire country. Now, we think that one of the best characteristics of Magen David Adom is the diversity of the organization. That means that within Magen David Adom, you can find Jews, Christians, Muslims, Druze, Bedouins. Everyone are working together in order to save lives in the state of Israel. We are a non-governmental and volunteer-based organization. That means that we operate more than 32,000 volunteers in order to be able to reach to anyone in Israel that is in need, and to do it fast, to do it professionally, and to do it with the compassion that the people of Magen David Adom are delivering with them.
Wow. And now, do you work full-time or are you volunteers? What do you both do?
I'm a full-time worker, so I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'm 25 and a paramedic. I've been a paramedic for the last 6 years. Most of my activities in the last few years in the organization is that I'm a head instructor for paramedic courses all over the country in different types of groups. I did my paramedic course as a part of my national service. I did not serve the Army from religious reasons, so I actually served in Magen David Adom as a national service as a paramedic for 3 years. So I'm a full-time worker now, yes, and most of my job, I also work on the emergency medical intensive care unit, but I also teach, and I teach the next generations of our paramedics.
Hadass is actually one of our future of Magen David Adom, future generation and future leaders, because we need more paramedics like her to lead the state of Israel for a better future. And I myself started up as a teenage volunteer at the age of 15. I actually volunteered. I actually volunteer just outside the city of Nazareth. So I was privileged enough to not only be involved in providing care in Jewish towns and cities, but also to the Christians and Muslims that live in the city of Nazareth. And I'm also a full-time employee. About 10% of Magen David Adom team members are staff, and the rest 90% are volunteers. And I think this is something that puts Magen David Adom in the heart of the land of Israel, because anyone knows somebody who is serving the people of the state of Israel by volunteering or working in Magen David Adom.
Wow. Well, thank you both. I'm just overwhelmed with your selfless service and the way that you, are serving your country and you're your people. But I feel like, all first responders and paramedics and, people that run into danger. And so as a first responder, how do you both live with that tension, being on guard and protecting? And as you mentioned, everybody serves in some capacity for a small time. But how do you live with that tension of being on guard, but then enjoying your life and in your beautiful country?
I can tell you about myself that, as I said, I didn't serve in the Army. I did national service, which means I was never taught to be a combat medic. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone in Magen David Adom, first thing that goes in their mind is the fact that they want to save lives. We always care about our safety and our patient safety and our teammates' safety. But I think in the day-to-day, I'll tell you about now, because I'm a paramedic in Jerusalem region. We're unfortunately not strangers to terror, but we always unite. And I think that that's something that, as Uri said, is very unique for Magen David Adom, because the diversity of the types of people that we meet. And I'll tell you about the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Since the beginning of the war, there wasn't one station through the whole country of Magen David Adom you didn't have warm meals, friends who you can talk to and vent, just people who took the ambulances were out of the stations because everyone wanted to be a part. Everyone wanted to save lives. People took to their homes voluntarily ambulances so they can be on response. And I think that our power is, although we know terror, although we're not strangers to, unfortunately, to very difficult times, we always overcome, and we always make sure to keep our love for saving lives the first thing that is important for us. And I'll tell you about the last month, the unity you feel amongst our teams and in our country is just amazing. So I think always we deal with the most difficult things that humans can, but on the other hand, we know that we have to stay strong so we can do our job. Mm-hmm. And if we won't, it will be harder. So we keep our head high and we're united and we just keep doing our job.
When I recall all the times that I myself have been on harm's way, I think that at the end of the day, when the Magen David Adom people go to help others, as you mentioned, they are selfless. And they care for the others. For me, it was like seeing a tunnel vision that in the middle of it is somebody that needs my help. And now I'm not seeing or not feeling not the mortar shells that are being shot towards me, not the bullets that are flying above my head. I'm focusing on what's most important. In some ways similar, different, but a little bit similar, is when I pray at night for the return of the hostages kept in Gaza, I'm not thinking about anything else. I see them coming back home. This is what I'm focusing on. And I'm not thinking about other implications or what will go around. I see only them. And so when I go and treat terror victims, I see them and I see them only. And I agree with what Hadass said, that at the end of the day, when an incident, a terror attack is over and you go back to your station, you feel, you remember what happened. You understand that you were on harm's way. Nevertheless, you feel safe because you feel among a friend. You feel the feeling that you are within a family, that people understand what you've gone through, that people are there to support you. And those people are your colleagues and brothers and sisters from Magen David Adom. And this is how we overcome.
Well, thank you. And would you both mind, walking me through what October 7th looked like for you? Because I think for the world, it changed the world. All of us were horrified watching it, but you lived it. You saw it firsthand. So will you guys tell me, what did that morning look like for you, and what were you called to do that day?
So as I said, I'm a Jerusalem-based paramedic, which means I started my Saturday morning, my Shabbat morning, in a small station, very quiet station in the Jerusalem region. When I started my shift, we understood that rocket had started, but something else that we've never seen before also started that morning. And we got a call from our dispatch to go down to Sderot, which is a city in the south of Israel. Now, you would ask yourself, why was a Jerusalem-based paramedic going down south? The reason is because the region that I was working in that morning usually is a place that, unfortunately, there are terror attacks. We had an armored ambulance. And because we had an armored ambulance, which we only have 3 of those all over the country, which is the intensive care, the Bomba intensive care unit, which is armored. We only have 3 of those. So dispatch told us that we're needed down south. So they were still shooting and it wasn't safe for medical teams. So when we got on the way to Sderot, my driver and I, we tried to prepare ourselves. We tried to talk about what we are going to encounter, but very quickly, as we heard dispatches going on and on with all the deaths and the injured, we understood that we can't prepare ourselves. And usually, on the way to terror attacks, we know that if you're prepared, you're going to treat better, and afterwards, processing everything will be easier. But we couldn't. When we got to Sderot, there's a long road in the entrance of Sderot. It usually takes you about a minute and a half to drive through it on a day-to-day, but that day just felt like a lifetime because on the side of the road, tens of bodies laid down of civilians, all just woke up for their Saturday and holiday morning, all dressed in holiday clothes and just murdered and butchered in the streets the way that they went out of their homes. Very difficult images because we also went through those bodies, unfortunately, because the city was on lockdown because there were still terrorists around the city. So we're the only ones who could go in because we were armored and we were wearing special armored vests and helmets. But no one could enter the city, not even regular ambulances, because as we know, unfortunately, also our colleagues, some of them got injured or lost their lives because they were in their ambulances. So that day, I went through those bodies, unfortunately, around 15 times going in and out of the city. And just seeing the life that could have been, and small bodies around the playground, and elderly people who woke up to go to a holiday tour and were murdered in the bus stop. It was just very difficult images. But on that day, I got to save lives. I treated around 13 patients that day, and fortunately, all of them survived. If you want me to tell you about one of my patients, he is a police officer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know, but in Sderot, the police station was under fire through the whole day. There were Hamas snipers, terror snipers on the roof, and it was just heroic fighting from our soldiers. Just heroic kids, and I think kids went up to 25, but these 19-year-olds were fighting for their lives and for their friends' lives, and they were putting tourniquets on their arms and kept on fighting. And so the police station was under attack, so we couldn't attend. And you have to understand that usually as an EMT or paramedic, the first thing we teach is if you don't have your safety, you don't treat. But this was so different because we knew that if we weren't going to treat, no one would, because no one could enter the city. So when we got to the police station, we understood that there was still fire going. But my driver very heroically told me, "Listen, Hadass, you stay in the ambulance, and I'll bring the patients to you." So I got my ambulance ready. I got blood components ready. I got fluid and IVs and medications. And my driver brings in this young police officer, around 30 years old. Afterwards, my understanding is he was shot around 3 to 4 hours before we could get to him, which is in trauma meaning it's a death sentence. But I started treating him, and he was very pale, very, very weak, and he opened his eyes and he held my hand and he asked me if he's gonna live. And for a split moment, I let my emotional guard, my emotional shield, which protects me, I let it down, and I knew that I couldn't assure him life. And I promised him that I'm going to do everything in my power to help him. And I almost lost him 3 times along the way, and I got him to stay awake, and I got a message a few weeks back that he survived. But during that day, seeing all those injured and seeing the heroic fighting of our forces and seeing all our friends saving lives was just truly, I was so proud being a paramedic that day, so part of being a part of Magen David Adom. I did that drive so many times because we were the only ones who could enter the city. We didn't evacuate the patients straight to the hospital. We had a fleet of ambulance just waiting for us in a safer location, basic life support and the intensive care units just waiting for us. And the moment that we got there, we transferred our patients and they took them to the hospital. I was there around 15 hours during that day. Very difficult images, but fortunately, like I said, I got to save lives. Unfortunately, we lost 11 friends and colleagues. Some of them while they were saving lives. And as our CEO said very, very powerfully, our paramedics found their bodies with the gloves still on their hands, which I think is the essence of our colleagues who lost their lives. Because everyone that day just wanted to help and treat. But it was very difficult knowing that I might not go back home that day. But as Uri said, we had tunnel vision. Only a few days after I understood and how much danger I was in. But even if I did know, and even if you would ask me today if I would do it again, I would say yes, because this is our job. And I'll just tell you that the police officer survived until we got to him was because of a heroic woman police officer who laid on top of him for 3 hours to apply pressure so he won't bleed out. So yes, that was my 7th of October. I really hold on with hope some of the patients that I did get the privilege to treat, and I do feel like it's a privilege because I think that if I would have been home that day, I would just want to be there, even though I knew how much difficult it was.
I think that Hadass' story is the story of Magen David Adom that day. I would only add that for us, October 7th was a day of miracles. It began with a miracle that for no apparent reason, Magen David Adom was in a high alert status that morning. That means that more ambulances were at homes of our volunteers and paid staff. There was no apparent reason. Magen David Adom was on high alert. The other miracle is the miracle of having Hadass and her colleagues ready in the ambulances, and they were sent there to save those people's lives. It's nothing less than a miracle. And the third miracle is that Magen David Adom was able to actually recover people not only from dangerous areas, but also from hospitals, to take them to remote hospitals, thus allowing new injured to arrive to the hospitals, to the nearby hospitals, and being taken care of. October 7th was a day of enormous tragedy on the one hand. And within this tragedy, it was a day of miracles for many people.
I'd like to add that although I do hold on to those miracles, I do think that we could do our jobs because we were prepared. I didn't feel for a second that day that I was lost. Even in the most darkest moments, I knew that I had my colleagues behind me and my organization behind me. And as I said, I treated terror attacks, but never something like this. But I truly felt proud being a part of an organization that was working so hard. We knew what we were doing. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about us as an organization, and it was mesmerizing just seeing everyone's work, really.
Well, thank you. Again, it's, we watch it from a distance, but you lived it. And to hear you even give blessing reports, and just see the miracles. And that is what Samaritan's Purse, we are a Christian organization. And as you mentioned, you prepare and you train and you plan. We hope for the best, but we prepare for worse situations. And we go into fires. We don't like to, but as you mentioned, we see the ways that God, and I actually love Psalm 46 says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth should change, and though the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake at its swelling and pride. We see him as a refuge and a strength. And as you mentioned, there are always blessings in the burdens and in the terror and the trials. You saw people come together. And that is how we got to know your organization. Samaritans Purse, we responded immediately, got involved with our church partners and tried to see how we could help. And that's how we heard about you. We heard about, I'm sorry for your 11 members that were killed. I'm so sorry. I know those are brothers and sisters and family. And then multiple ambulances were destroyed, and that, broke our hearts because then you couldn't respond after. So we are helping to resupply ambulances and equipment that you lost.
It's strengthening our resilience. It makes you feel that you are not alone in Israel. It gives you the understanding that people around the world care for the people of Israel. There are no words to express how grateful we are for this. But let me assure you that not only Hadass and her family, not only me and my family, but the entire Magen David Adom and the entire state of Israel appreciate the support that we get from you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart as well, and from the bottom of all our hearts of the people of Magen David Adom.
Well, thank you for sharing stories. And yeah, I think we are a small part, but you are the ones carrying it out on the ground. And so as you were talking, I thought, everybody, we want to support you financially and help, but this body also prays. We pray for you, and I think you telling stories allows us to pray more specifically. So I guess to close, Hadass and Uri, how would you ask us to pray for you all, for your country, Israel, but also, your staff and your people?
I would ask the people that hear us today to pray to God for Him to give strength to the men and women of Magen David Adom, to paramedics like Hadass, to have courage to continue and treat other people, and to be courageous in what they do, and to be selfless as she did on October 7th. Please, God, bring back all the soldiers of the IDF safely to their home. Bring back the men and women, the innocent civilians that are kept hostage by Hamas. Bring them home to their families, safe and healthy. And we hope for, and bring us peace to the land of Israel.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you again for sharing your hearts and what you've seen. And again, we are so sorry. I mean, we're all just in tears, but I'm grateful that you're allowing us to understand even deeper. Well, thank you. Well, we are praying and we are partnering with you. And thank you again for doing the work on the ground and loving your people so well.
Thank you so much.
It was a joy to talk to you. God bless you. This conversation was heavy, but it opened my eyes to the needs on the ground. There is so much tragedy and heartache, but it's good to see God working in the midst of all of it. As Uri said, they're seeing miracles, even in the midst of suffering. Please join us in praying for Israel, and let's not forget the innocent civilians in Gaza who are suffering as well. Thank you for listening today, and have a great week.